Hello and welcome to Media Monitor on the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial. Now this is where we take a look inside the world of media, analysing the trends, the issues and the reporting of some of the week's top stories. I'm Peter Ndoro and this is what's coming up on the show today. Well, it's some good news for community media. MDDA is to offer emergency relief funds to community media. And if you want to access the fund, please stay tuned for the CEO to give us more details on how to apply and who qualifies. Our international editor feature this week takes us to Kenya, and we'll be unpacking new ways of reporting on COVID-19. And in our news and history feature this week, we take you back to 1997 and find out what happened in that year in South Africa. Stay with us for that. So that's the show, but remember you can engage with us on social media using the Twitter handle #SABC Media Monitor. We'd love to hear from you. #SABC Media Monitor if you've got any thoughts and views on what you see on the program. And also on WhatsApp, our number is 065 862 4548. That's 065 862 4548. All right, now before we get into our highlighted stories on the program, let's first take a look at what's happening on the front pages of your Sunday newspapers. And we'll start with the Sunday Times, and this is leading with a story about which says that the Cooperative Governance Minister has tabled a draft for the lockdown at level 3 regulations that propose the lifting of the ban on alcohol sales but extends the prohibition on cigarette sales. And it's also proposed that all sectors of the economy be opened except hotels, restaurants, bars, gyms and other recreational facilities. The City Press is leading with a story about the country's readiness to open schools scheduled for June the 1st. The paper says that major teacher unions are threatening that their members will not be returning to work. Protective gear, cleaning and water are cited as some of the obstacles causing the chaos. The Sunday Independent is highlighting the controversy surrounding Bidvest's donation of personal protective equipment to township schools, with emerging entrepreneurs saying that this is a ploy for the service and distribution giant to position itself for future government contracts. They say that government is being hypocritical, bypassing SMMEs and saying that it's seeking to create black industrialists. The Sunday Tribune's front page has the story of a KwaZulu-Natal Correctional Services employee who infected other officials at a braai. There are now calls for the employee to be charged for going to the braai after he tested positive for COVID-19. This call is being led by the IFP spokesperson for community safety, Blessed Gwala. And finally, the Sunday World is leading with a story concerning a former minister, Jeff Radebe, who apparently has dragged businessman Kenny Kunene and his news website to court seeking an apology. This after Kunene published a story suggesting that Radebe gave his alleged baby mother a job to avoid paying maintenance. All right, we'll take another look at those newspaper headlines a little bit later on in the program. But first, I know a lot of you get your news on social media, so let's take a look at see what's trending on Twitter at the moment. And this was a short while ago, actually. Let's take a look, and some of them are the usual one, The Sacred Space. That's a program that we have on Radio Metro. And Cyril Ramaphosa at number 4, apparently people are waiting for a speech where he's going to announce the lockdown going down to 3. This is what people are hoping, and they're talking about what they'd like to see in level 3. But the big one, I guess, for the Muslim world in the world is Eid Mubarak, and that, of course, is the end of Ramadan. And so people will be ending their fast, and a lot of celebration will be taking place. And so a lot of people just posting their images and saying Happy Eid Mubarak to everybody, and just good wishes at this time, actually. So A lot of these images, just nice pictures, people showing themselves, and of course getting ready to celebrate, as you can see with this image here. I would love to dive into those sweets, I've got to say. All right, so that's it. Eid Mubarak, and happy Eid Mubarak to all of our Muslim viewers, and that's a big item on social media. All right, okay, stay with us. There's so much still to come right here. Right, now the COVID-19 pandemic has had a devastating effect on the country's economy and the lives of our citizens in one way or another. We've seen a number of media houses forced to close down and even retrench some of its staff in the wake of dwindling advertising revenues in particular. Community media is very much a necessary part of the media landscape, has not been spared either. This has prompted the Media Development and Diversity Agency to step in and try and help. To tell us a little bit more, I'm now joined by the MDDA's CEO, Ms. Zukiswa Poche. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program. Hello, Zukiswa, can you hear me?
Good morning, Peter, and thank you very much for always... Good morning, Peter.
Yes, yes. All right, so let's start before we get in.
Very much for...
Carry on.
I was saying thank you very much for always being keen to host me in your show.
No, it's a pleasure, honestly, and it's such great news as well that you're sharing with us. But before we begin with the assistance and the help that you're providing, just give us a sense of just how vulnerable has community media been in the face of COVID-19 that prompted you to take action?
Peter, when the president first announced the national disaster or the pandemic as the national disaster, and subsequently announced a lockdown, we were therefore very aware that the community media sector would not survive without an intervention from government and from the MDDA in particular, or all other societies. So when the lockdown was announced, and we were aware that because they depend on small businesses and other big business in terms of generating revenue, and because of the lockdown, most businesses were not open, and we knew that they would lose their contract. So we knew that they were in a very vulnerable state, and hence we then conceptualized revoking Section 17 of the MDDA Act. We then conceptualized an emergency response fund. On the 28th of March, the board of the MDDA then approved 20 million on the emergency relief fund, which first 10 million was disbursed in April. 215 communities and 115 community print and small commercial print, Peter.
All right, so I guess, you know, at the end of it all, what's most important for you is to make sure that citizens continue to have access to this diversified media, because that's your mandate, isn't it? Especially in their languages. And so this is what must have prompted your support, because if they are silenced, then basically citizens are deprived of this very important assistance. So tell us about what, I think you've started to give us an indication about the board resolution and what you started to do, but give us a sense of what you've been able to do so far.
Thank you, Peter. So as I've already mentioned, we launched an emergency fund. The board approved a 20 million fund, and the first phase was then rolled out in April, immediately after the president had announced a national lockdown. And that is the first thing that we did. And the second thing that we did was to put the minister in the presidency on community media radio stations to cascade government message. We also work very closely with the department called GCIS and the presidency. in ensuring that the sector receives much needed revenue. So we link up with the department also to ensure that we cascade national messages to the community radio stations. And if it's posters, we then send them to our small commercial print and community print. The other thing that we're able to do, Peter, in April was to also seek and get approval from the board on a relief related to signal costs. And you would know that most of our community broadcasters actually use Centec to transmit. So again, an amount of 18 million was approved for signal distribution, and 11.7 million was disbursed immediately. The 6.6 million that is left is actually linked to the broader approval of normal grants, where 22 community broadcasters were approved for normal grants at the end of March, and 6.6 of their approval of the grants is linked to, again, signal distribution. So we've been able to disburse the first 10 million. And on Monday, which is tomorrow, Peter, the 25th, we're launching the second phase of the emergency relief of the MDDA. And this is the reason why we asked to be on this platform today and other platforms to actually ensure that as many community broadcasters or community media are aware of this fund and that they can access it.
All right, so you've done quite a lot already, and we were busy talking about phase one, where quite a number of funds have already been distributed to quite a number of community media. Talk to us about this phase two. What will that involve? And then we'll talk about who qualifies.
All right, in phase one, Peter, in phase two, again, like it was in phase one and phase two, in fact, the aim of the emergency response fund of the MDDA is to touch the entire sector. So it is not only meant for the current MDDA beneficiaries. We go beyond that. That is the reason why, Peter, we worked in the first phase and we are working in this second phase with all sector bodies. That includes the National Community Radio Forum. It includes the South African Community Radio Association, which is SACRO, the Association for Independent Publishers, which is the AIP, the NAB, so that beyond just our database, these sector bodies are also able to reach people that we wouldn't necessarily have reached because they are not on our database. But what we did, we also sought and we received a database from ICASA. So we're working from that list, but we are ensuring that broader community media beyond just MDDA beneficiaries are able to access this fund. This is in line with our mandate of ensuring that South Africans do receive the much needed information, particularly at this point around COVID-19, and to ensure that people know what the regulations are, but also know how to protect themselves. The president also made a call for all South Africans to play their part, and the MDDA is playing its part through its mandate of ensuring access to information.
All right, so who qualifies and how do they apply?
Peter, the entire community media sector qualifies. The entire small commercial print qualifies. But let me qualify my statement. In the 10 million that we currently have, we're launching tomorrow, 8 million will be set aside for community broadcasters, and only 2.5 is set aside for small commercial print. Let me explain the reason why. Bulk of the funding we receive at the MDDA comes from commercial broadcasters. And so we are unable to take funding from one sector and use it towards another sector. And so we only have got 2.5 million for the small commercial print. And the packages are also different as opposed to the phase one, where all commercial print, small commercial print and community broadcasters received an equal amount of 45,000. This time, the community broadcasters will receive a package of 50,000 per project, but the print will receive, or publishers will receive 20,000. And let me explain what those amounts are intended for. We had received a lot of outcry Peter, when we disbursed the first 10 million, already the sector was writing to us to request that they deviate some of the money and use it towards things like operational costs. People were talking about rentals and so forth. So we thought that in this second phase, we must then relieve people that are actually, because they've lost revenue because of the pandemic, and so they've got arrears in rentals, and they're running behind with the bond repayments and are unable to perhaps pay even stipends and salaries. So the package, the 50,000 package, will comprise of things like that. But Peter, what is important in our criteria is that because we are going to be expected to account about which money we gave to who and for what, and whether those people qualified. So part of the criteria is that you would, in the application, be allowed and be required to demonstrate to the MDDA that you require money for ABCD, for rent, for stipends, for salaries, and whatever else, because you have lost revenue because of the pandemic. I've made an example to say, if we will ask for 3 months bank statement so that we can also see what has been coming into your account and what you've received prior to the pandemic and what you are currently receiving.
All right,
and so we have learned that there's a lot of anxiety in the sector that they will then not consider their action. What we are asking is that you don't bring us statements that are telling us that you are in arrears from October last year, from December last year, things that are prior to the pandemic, because we must account that we gave money to the sector because it needed it, because it was negatively impacted by the pandemic. So you give us your banking statements just so that we are able to analyze and see that you were making money and now you are applying for funding because you are unable to make money. And we are certain that the sector will comply. So who qualifies? Everyone qualifies, but there's certainly a qualifying criteria. And if I go back to the package for the publishers, because the publishers don't need a lot of space to do their business, to conduct their business, we are giving them this 20,000 purely for publishing, for content dissemination. That's what it is going to be used for. But Peter, also in these small packages, we also are providing for things like data or telecommunications. And there's also another standard item for both sectors, which is for personal, what is the masks, right, and so forth, and the scopes and the masks, yes, and so those essentials, hygiene essentials, we are catering for, and they are standard in both packages.
All right. So, look, we're running out of time, but 10 million sounds like a lot. But when we think about just how many people need help, you're going to need help as well to grow this fund beyond that.
Yes, Peter. So what we've done is we take cue from government. When every time there's an announcement, we sort of then also take another decision. What we've already done is we have foreseen, and because we listen to government and we support government's call for us to do our part and to support the sector. What was critical, Peter, was that for us as the MDDA was to ensure that the sector survives the pandemic and that beyond the pandemic, there is still a community media sector, because we can't overemphasize the fact that this sector is very crucial to the democracy of this country. So we're ensuring that beyond this, it survives. So I think in the third quarter, around the third quarter, August, September, we have already again gone back to the board to say, please, can you allow us to use now from the current budget of 2020-2021, take some of the fund and again put it in the emergency. So I'm certain that in the third quarter, we will again come back and announce another third phase, totaling 30 million emergency relief from the MDDA during this period, Peter. And that is very important for the sector to understand that we are doing and making all these efforts to ensure that it is able to discharge its mandate of ensuring that there's access to information and that the people of South Africa are aware and understand the impact of the COVID and how to protect themselves during this period.
All right. Zukiswa, thanks very much indeed. And a wonderful initiative. And I'm sure it's going to assist a lot of community media that's really on the skids at the moment because of COVID-19. So all of this kicks off phase 2 tomorrow. And they can go onto your website and follow the details in terms of applying, right?
Correct, Peter. We are in fact sending them a letter inviting them to apply, sending the same letter to the sector bodies to assist us distribute it widely. The address to apply will be applications@mdda.org.za. Peter, we will also have a helpline which is relief.fund at Q&A at mdda.org.za. Let me repeat that. I think I made a mistake. It's relief.fund Q&A at mdda.org.za. Peter, there's a couple of additional things we are doing this time to actually make sure that the fund is distributed widely and that there's smooth and adequate communication to the sector, because we got a lot of criticism with this initial fund that we didn't communicate clearly enough, and if people, in fact, some of them thought that we did not communicate at all. So we've got a helpline this time. We've got a Q&A. We're sending out a media statement tomorrow. We're going to be on a lot of radio stations and other national platforms, and we are going to be sending the letters directly to people's inboxes, but also people can then find us the information on our website, which is www.mdda.org.za.
All right. Zukiswa, thanks so much indeed. And on behalf of all of the community media, thank you so much indeed for this badly needed assistance, and carry on the good work.
Thank you
all right, fantastic.
For having me.
Great. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
All right. So that's Zukiswa Poche, who's the CEO of the MDDA. So 10 million Rand fund is, I think this is phase 2 of the assistance emergency relief funds for everybody in the media sector, the community media sector, both online, print and television as well. You can get assistance. Go to the MDDA website, mdda.org.za. All the details are there and how to apply and how to access this funding. And you'll have to produce things like bank statements, etc. But go to the website. It all opens tomorrow. All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and don't forget to be part of this conversation on Twitter, and the hashtag is #SABC Media Monitor, or alternatively you can send us a message on WhatsApp, and the number is 065 862 4548, 065 862 4548.
From grade 1 up until grade 4, I was bullied about my dark skin complexion. That made me to hate myself. I have learned a lot from SABC. I have learned to respect yourself and respect other people and love yourself. One of the shows that have inspired me is Skim Sam. It shows that no matter challenge that you're going through in life, you can make it. My name is Njabula Zulu and I'm 13 years old. I am a motivational speaker, a violin player, and anti-bullying activist.
If there's one thing that we have learned from COVID-19 is that we are all in this together.
With everyone being affected with COVID-19, as a show that brings hope and inspiration to the marginalized, the team decided to lead from the front in such trying times.
If you are doing the little bit that you can with what you have, you can let us know on social media. Just use the hashtag StoriesUntold SABC. Alternatively, catch up with our shows on YouTube. You can search for Stories Untold SABC.
We've received information that these suspects were making fake permits.
It's not only for informal trading. He does permits for moving around, moving from province to province. So that defeats the whole regulations of the national lockdown.
I was arrested for 4 hours, but I proved myself that I did not issue any permit.
3 suspects arrested. 1, the owner of the internet cafe that was selling fake permits.
It's our mandate as SABC News to bring you factual and accurate coverage amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And from the Northern Cape, we'll keep you up to date with all the latest. Remember to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Alternatively, use alcohol-based sanitizer and don't touch your face. The SABC is your reliable source for independent and impartial coverage. Make sure you use all SABC platforms and follow our reporters locally and abroad for all the news that matters.
Welcome back. You're still watching Media Monitor on the SABC News Channel. Let's take a look at some other news across the continent, and we begin in Burundi, a country that blocked social media platforms this past Wednesday when voters took to the polls to elect a leader to replace long-serving President Pierre Nkurunziza. Media outlets confirmed that Facebook, WhatsApp and Twitter were not accessible on the day of the election. Only those using virtual private networks or VPN, which masks a user's identity, could access social media sites, and authorities have not responded to requests for comment on shutting down this all-important communication tool, of course, which is the internet. And this is not the first time they've done that, to be honest with you. This is ploy that they've used several times in the past. Moving to North Africa, the past week, the co-founder and editor-in-chief of the online newspaper Madamasar, Lina Atala, was arrested for several hours last weekend in Cairo. According to reports, it was the latest example of the Egyptian government's constant harassment of this newspaper and its staff, who are symbols of independent journalism in Egypt. Atala was arrested outside the capital's Tora prison complex, where she was interviewing Leila Sueif, the mother of imprisoned activist Ala Abdel Fattah. So, challenges across the continent, particularly when it comes to the media and their ability to do their work. And we highlighted some of these issues when we looked at the World Press Freedom Index last week. Okay, so we go now into our news archives and we take you back to 1997. So that's 3 years into democracy. And that's when the ANC insisted that the Free State is the only official name of the province. Opposition parties continued, though, to object. And this is how the SABC News covered that story. You remember it was called the Orange Free State before, but the orange was dropped and a lot of people were not happy.
The controversy surrounding the official name of the Free State province seems far from over. While the ANC insists that Free State is the only official name, opposition parties continue to object. They say it's language discrimination and that the ANC's claim that this decision was made in the legislature in 1995 is simply not true.
Free State, Vrystaat or Foreistaat. But the ANC say there's only one official name for the province, the Free State. They say that in February 1995, the legislature agreed to change the province's name from Orange Free State to Free State. Opposition parties denied that the legislature agreed on just an English version of the name. They say it was only agreed that Orange and Oranje be removed from the province's name. Free State Premier Dr. Ivy Matsepi-Kasaburi says she's not willing to interfere with a decision that's already been made. But opposition parties believe there's a lot more to the story. The Freedom Front say it will not hesitate to get a court interdict against the ANC if the organisation attempted to bring a motion in the legislature to change the name. The National Party say the ANC's promises of reconciliation is being overshadowed by its hatred of the Afrikaans language. And while the politicians battle it out, residents seem to think a province by any other name is still a province. They're still sticking to their home languages when naming the province. Richard Newton, SABC, Bloemfontein.
All right, so we've certainly lived through quite a lot of history, taking you back to 1997. And some of you may have recognized that news anchor, of course, and that was the late Alice Chavunduka. All right, we'll have more for you after the break, and we go to East Africa.
I've received anguished calls from several healthcare workers, not only about the death of their co-worker, but about the conditions they're forced to work under at the Khayelitsha District Hospital.
They talk about us as heroes, frontline workers. We are not being treated as heroes from the inside. We are being treated as nothing. The hospital is still operating as business as usual. They didn't call any companies to come and disinfect the place.
You don't have to close the whole hospital for the decontamination.
CCMA offices around the country are closed as part of the national lockdown, but that hasn't stopped the flow of complaints from flooding in electronically.
I've literally lost all work.
Workers in the public sector, workers in the private sector, in this period need to ensure that their rights are protected.
The main devastation here is going to be economic devastation. Yes, the health issues are key and we must save our people, but we have to save jobs. We have to save the dignity of our people.
All South Africans will have to stay at home.
As the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro or Municipality, we have about 5 venues to cater for the homeless.
Officials say approximately half of the 4,000 homeless people in the Cape Town CBD are already being accommodated in shelters.
To find about 8 people who are sleeping in there, the chances of them infecting everyone in there, they are very high.
I think we underestimated the numbers. At least now, the situation is firmly under control.
We're trying to keep our hands on the pulse for the homeless in the city as part of our President's call.
Welcome back. Let's take you to East Africa now, and we get a sense of new trends that are taking place. Alternative media voices have been contributing in the storytelling of COVID-19 in Kenya. And tell us a little bit more about that. We're now joined by Dr. Wambui, Wambui Munyu, who's a senior lecturer in media studies at the Daystar University in Kenya. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program. Jambo.
Jambo, thank you for having me.
Ah, wonderful. Okay, so you say, I mean, you've been observing and watching because part of the work that you do is research in the media, that there are new voices that are coming through to tell the COVID-19 story. Take us through what you've seen, what you've found.
Well, thank you. And my interest is the use of digital technologies in newsrooms. So I was struck, and this is even before COVID, by how digital technologies were allowing new people to come on board. So we have, be it individuals, bloggers, vloggers, or other people, including activists, who are using these platforms to tell stories. So in the COVID situation, for example, we have the traditional media, radio, TV, print, telling, stories and important stories at that. But then we also have other people who've been using Facebook Live, Instagram TV, Twitter, Threads to tell stories beyond kind of the official narratives that we are used to hearing from traditional media. Traditional media often carries the official voices, the government announcements about measures taken and so on. But the other voices now are coming in and saying, okay, that's fine, but let's also tell other sides of the story. So they're going into informal settlements, for example, and telling the story that is on the other side of a government pronouncement, for example. So if it's a curfew announced, then the other voices are saying, okay, what does the curfew mean for the people on the ground? So it's actually been fascinating to watch.
All right, so you've given us a hint of the kind of stories that are being told, which perhaps sort of step away from the beaten track that the mainstream media has done. Has this been disruptive, though, in the way that news is told and stories are told? Because as journalists, we're trained in a certain way, but these new voices can do whatever they like.
Yes, and that's an interesting thing. I think that's a good thing and a bad thing, that they can do whatever they like. There's a lack of constraint in terms of, how do I tell the story? I think for the mainstream guys, there tends to be formats, and you work within deadlines and space constraints or time constraints. But if you're on Instagram TV, for example, you don't have any time constraints. You can run a video for 3 hours if you want, or 2 minutes. So you find that the storytelling is a little different. In an article I wrote for the conversation, I cite one example of someone who just takes a video and just enters, people's homes and kind of tells the story. Now, the downside of this, and this actually came up in a class discussion I had, is that there are questions about ethics. When I enter someone's space, have I gotten their consent? Am I careful to be, respectful of privacy and so on, or am I just telling the story? I presume the traditional journalists will probably think of that very quickly. But will some of these guys who are very committed to telling their story always consider that? That I don't know. I'm not saying they don't do it, but I don't know for sure. So it would be interesting to find that out. Yeah. So I think there is a good side and a bad side. But beyond that, I think there is still telling stories in fairly standard ways, even for these newer voices. But the new platforms allow them to play around.
All right. I mean, there must be a concern when people are don't have to answer to anybody about fake news, or perhaps not checking facts all that well. And, this whole thing of retweeting without checking what you're retweeting, that must be a danger to these new voices that are coming through.
It absolutely is. I think the so-called new voices that are being interested in are people who go out and get information, and you can see that it is the real information. The fake news, though, is still out there, and you'll find that, like WhatsApp groups are notorious carriers of fake news, which is very easily spread. But I find that, some people will spread it and believe it, but I think people are also becoming a little more savvy and a little more careful, that they'll hear something here, and then maybe they'll check it out somewhere else, be it with a trusted, traditional media source, or a trusted new voice, so to speak. But yes, fake news is definitely a problem.
And also there is that danger, of course, where a lot of people go onto these social medias to get as many likes as possible, to get as many subscribers as possible, because that then translates into revenue. But the danger then becomes, it's not so much about the story, but the way it's presented and some of the drama that goes with it. And I wonder if that's taking away from some of the importance of the news.
Well, I think you can't get away from the fact that you're always going to have people who take advantage of, a situation and who use the glamour and the so-called, swag and just looking wonderful to their advantage. But that happens in TV as well. That happens in multiple formats as well. And I think what helps is time. Time is the test, because you eventually figure out, is this a good source? Is this a bad source? And we've seen that, by the way, even with social media influencers here, where there are some people who've acquired large followings and so on, but they are known as, paid hacks, for example. They are guns for hire, so to speak, online. So people have kind of gotten to know that about them. But yes, you can't always know, and you're going to run into some of these things and fall for it, because it's, wild on the internet, so to speak. But I think time becomes kind of your test and your protection.
All right, so some people say that journalism on the continent is not for sissies, because sometimes the authorities can come quite hard on what they deem to be either unpatriotic or something that's not flattering to the authorities. Is this something that's coming up with these new voices, that some of them are running into trouble with the authorities for some of the things that they say?
Yes, and this is not just in the present time, even in the past. There have been, bloggers and people on some of these digital platforms who've run into trouble with the government for, exposing some unsavory information or, that kind of thing. So that is definitely there. I think what happens is that these, newer voices are not funded, also dependent on advertising, say, from the government, as traditional media are. So they are a little freer in that sense. But yeah, you're going to get that kind of story. And if I may make this point, that a lot of times governments want the flattering story and the positive story. But journalism's job is not to flatter. It is to expose and to tell the truth. And the truth is what the truth is. So there we have it. Whoever is selling it, let them sell it as well.
All right. Before we go, just give us a sense of what's in the newspapers this weekend and what's been mostly on the front pages.
Okay. Well, in Kenya, we are dealing with COVID. Because COVID is getting a little less attention than it was. I think it's become almost routine, but politics is resuming its center place. So right now we are dealing with political alliances and the ruling party and some changes that it is making. We thought we'd get a break from that for a bit, but I think we are creeping back to business as usual. The other big thing that is in the papers this weekend comes from an announcement from the Kenyan government about a stimulus package to try and revitalize the economy post-COVID. So those are the big things that are in the air, so to speak.
All right. Thank you so much indeed. I loved the conversation that we've just had. Dr. Wambui Wamunyu, the head of Media and Film Studies, also a senior lecturer in journalism studies at Daystar University in Nairobi. Thanks so much indeed for your time. Asante sana. All right, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll bring it home. Stay with us.
If there's one thing that we have learned from COVID-19 is that we are all in this together.
With everyone being affected with COVID-19, As a show that brings hope and inspiration to the marginalized, the team decided to lead from the front in such trying times.
If you are doing the little bit that you can with what you have, you can let us know on social media. Just use the hashtag Stories Untold SABC. Alternatively, catch up with our shows on YouTube. You can search for Stories Untold SABC.
Why do you say South African policy is boneheaded, actually?
If you look in the intervention around the package for small businesses in the tourism sector, it seems to me that these policies are meant for something else than a crisis intervention.
A continued lockdown with no end in sight is not in the best interests of the small business sector and the economy.
Right, so let's take a look at what's happening in the papers here at home and what the papers are saying this morning. We're now joined via Zoom by Associate Professor in Media Studies at the University of the Witwatersrand, Professor Glenda Daniels. Thanks so much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Hello, Keith. Lovely to be here. How are you doing?
Wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
Great. All right. So before we get into the papers, let's just get a sense from you as an observer how well the media has been doing or not doing in terms of covering COVID-19.
I think the media has been doing pretty well at covering COVID-19 in very, very difficult and trying circumstances. And by this I mean that there's so much confusion out there, not just between and amongst ordinary people out there, don't like the word ordinary people, but people out there in the communities, people who've lost their jobs, but also amongst the scientist community, also amongst politicians. So we're living in times where reliable media is more important than ever before. And I think the media is doing, you can't say the media as though it's one hegemonic block, one whole. There are different parts to media. There's public media and there's public media and television and private television and over 400 radio stations and lots of print and lots of dying media at the moment because media has also taken a knock, which we can come to that if you like in terms of advertising. But I think what this era has also emphasized for us is the fact that we are living in an age of terrible digital divides where some people have access to media, social media, internet media, YouTubing and stuff like that, and a lot of people don't. But anyway, I'll let you ask me questions about, what in particular you want to know about media. What I've heard at the moment is that all the print media are following one political line. I don't think so. I think they might have a liberal stance in general, and then a liberal stance means necessarily that we follow the Constitution and constitutional rights and civil liberties and, going with that kind of ideological stance rather than saying we are anti-government or we are not anti-government. So there's a lot of robust fights and contestations out there, given the kind of confusing COVID-19 era that we're living in, isn't it?
Yeah. I wonder if, in terms of information, because what I find that's really important to me is I want to know in terms of what I can do to be safe. I want to know what's now known about the virus. I mean, at one stage, we weren't wearing masks, then we were wearing masks. I wonder if the media is doing a good job in telling people what they need to know to be safe and what's going to happen, what they need to look out for.
I think what's been happening is the media is putting things out as they come up. So, for instance, you'd hear that we have to wear masks when we go out. We know about the washing of hands and social distancing. I think by and large, the public have got the message. In fact, very loudly and clearly, you cannot switch on your TV or switch on any media without getting that message about washing your hands, not hugging, not kissing, social distancing, and so forth. I think the issue of masks has been a difficult one, so it's then made it difficult for the media when you get some scientists who are saying we should wear masks and some scientists who are saying it doesn't make a difference. But in the meanwhile, most scientists are actually now saying, yes, you must wear masks. I think one cannot accuse politicians or scientists for anything. This is, after all, a very new and very confusing virus. It is the first health pandemic in our lifetimes. We all have to try and be kind and patient with each other. I think the problem is that research is happening as we speak. So as we speak, there are loads and loads of theories bandied about, thrown about. It's not such a bad thing, but it does create mixed messages for the public. So certain publics who want to believe that it's actually okay, this is just a huge drama over nothing, they want to just go out and do their own thing. And don't want to be overgoverned and over-infantilized. You don't want to be treated like a 6-year-old when you're a 36-year-old and so forth. So all kinds of ideologies come to play naturally so in this difficult and confusing time.
All right, you know what, we're running out of time, so let's get to the papers. I know that the Sunday Times is one of the papers that you've picked up, and the front page concerns you.
Yes, so, we don't know for sure. There's no, I don't like the idea that you ban one thing. It's not the papers themselves. This is the kind of message from government. Banning one thing and making another thing okay. What is the logic behind it? I don't understand at all. But the Sunday Times has done well for picking up this particular issue because it's huge. It's huge around the country that people think they want to smoke. And it's not right and it's not fair for the government to decide about their levels of liberty about smoking and tobacco. So they have picked up on the right issue, and we are going to have an address by the President at 7 p.m. So we'll hear indeed if this is true. It is still speculation here. Apparently there was a 5-hour meeting, and there was no resolution. But this paper tells us there is a resolution. So I'm still not sure what's going on. I think the Sunday Times, right through the whole paper, except one or two stories. There's a story on black coffee. But most of the paper, 80% of the paper is on COVID-19. There's another story on Steenhuisen and the DA and rates for the leadership race. But by and large, it's the story of the day. One's almost forgotten what the story of the day was. It could have been a recession. It could have been job losses, and now everything's gotten even worse with COVID-19. So the whole paper's about that, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. If we look at the column list on the inside section, it's also the same thing, lockdown. Yes, everything's about the lockdown and what to expect and the different levels and so forth. So, yes, with the Sunday Times, I haven't read all the other newspapers. I saw the headlines in City Press just on Twitter earlier. Also the same thing, the headlines. Also a similar thing about also speculation that tobacco will continue to be banned right up until level 1. And there will be partial alcohol sales.
All right. So, interesting reads, as you say. It's all about COVID-19. The school chaos is what a lot of people are concerned about. We have a week to get clarity on the details. Teachers are threatening not to go back to work. And of course, it's how do you protect our children at these schools? And that's the City Press. The Sunday Independent is running a story which I found interesting, and maybe we can just chat about it. Bidvest, that in fact, you know what, we've run out of time, Professor Daniels. It's so sad, but thank you so much for your insights and being a guest. Always great talking to you. Stay safe, and we'll chat to you again soon. That's it from us. To you at home, thank you very much indeed for watching Media Monitor. We hope that you'll join us again at the same time next week. For me and the rest of the team, though, have a great day, stay blessed, and don't forget, wash your hands, social distance, and wear a mask as well. Stay at home if you can, if you're not an essential worker. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.